I want to welcome us all into Hymnal Exposition 5.0. And I pray that the Lord will bless us through His words today in Jesus' name. And the topic that we shall be deliberating upon says, what happens when we fail to raise the next generation? That is, what are the consequences or implications of not raising the next generation? And so, to answer this question, I would like to take us to the scriptures in the book of Judges, chapter 2, verse 10. I read. It says, and also that generation were gathered unto their fathers, and there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. Verse 11, and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and served Baalim. Okay, when we look at this topic very well, it is more or less a question to each and every one of us, particularly parents, mentors, guardians, and spiritual leaders. What happens when we fail to raise next generation unto the Lord? It's a question that must be answered. But before we answer the question, I would like us to look at this critically well. What does it mean to raise a generation? Raising a generation means intentionally nurturing. When we nurture, when we mentor, and we equip our next generation, that is, when we talk about next generation, we refer to the youth, to the children. When we intentionally mentor them, equipping them with foundational values, skills, truths, and faith. And when we look at raising the next generation, it is more or less a long-term investment. It's not a short-term investment at all, because it involves guiding them through their life challenges, helping them to build characters, and at the same time, helping them to thrive well in life and also make positive impact in the community in the long run. And when we consider next generation for the Lord, let's ask ourselves, does God command it? Does God command we raising the next generation? There are biblical mandates that we have concerning this. When we look at the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, from verse 6 to 7, God was giving instructions, particularly to the Israelites. And he told them, he said, I'm paraphrasing now. He says, this command and the law that I've given unto you, you must commit that to your hearts. Not just to your hearts, but teach them to the next generation, that is to your children. Even when you sit, when you stand, when you walk on the way, bind them on your neck. He commanded them to the extent that they should even hang it on the post of their doors. What is the whole essence of this? So that the next generation can have a view, can have a share of what God has done for them in the past, so that by this time that this older generation are no longer available, they will still have a remembrance of what God have done for their forefathers. And apart from that, the book of Proverbs 22 verse 6 says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. This tells us that this is a command from the Lord that we must raise next. And a typical example that I want to give us is the life of Abraham. When we consider the book of Genesis chapter 15, there God made a covenant with Abraham. And this covenant that God made with Abraham, Abraham did well that he passed it down to Isaac. And that was why in the book of Genesis 18, God said something there. He said, I know Abraham, that he will teach his children, not his children alone, but his entire household, to follow me, to serve me, and to obey my command. And Abraham did well. He passed it to Isaac. Isaac passed it to Jacob. And Jacob passed it down to Joseph. And this, like this, from the one generation to the fourth, the covenant that God made with Abraham was being passed down to all the generations of Abraham, till they were in bondage at Egypt, and God brought them out, because God had already foretold Abraham about it, that they will be sent to bondage, and after 100 years he will bring them out. And so this tells us that raising the next generation is the commandment of God. And so let's look at it. So it means that whenever we fail to raise God's generation, we are raising next generation, we are failing God, and we are disobeying God. And so what happens when we fail to do that? Number one is that there will be continuity. Covenant will not be passed from one generation to the other. And that's what we see in the life of Eli. When we consider the book of 1 Samuel chapter 2 verse 12, Bible says, now the children of Eli became the sons of Belial. Why? Because they do not know the Lord. And so the covenant that God made with Eli, God had to stop it on his children, because they did not follow the injunctions and the instructions of God. And so that means covenants will be stopped. And apart from that, there will be a perverse generation. When we look at the Judges chapter 2 verse 10 that I read earlier, God was talking about a situation in the land of Israel when all the people that knew about what God did to the Israelites, they were no longer alive. And the younger generation, they derailed from the way of the Lord. They began to serve Bali, So a perverse generation was raised. And apart from that, another thing that happened is that bastards are raised. And that will be found in the book of Hebrew. And God says, when we don't endure chastisement, Bible says we become bastards and not sons. So when we have children that do not endure the chastisements of the Lord, when we have children that are not raised in the ways of the Lord, they become bastards. And finally, when we fail to raise the next generation, what we have done is that we have failed to do the commandments of God. That is, we have disobeyed God and we have failed God. And this is a question to all parents, to all spiritual leaders, to all spiritual guidance. That kingdom lifestyle, that holiness, that righteousness, those things, those dimensions of power and holiness that God has given unto us, who are we committing it to? Or as we die, we go with those things. So it is very important that we pass it down to the next generation. It is very important for us as parents to teach our children in the way of the Lord. Otherwise, a generation will come that will not know the Lord again. A generation will come that will ask, who is that Lord that you are even serving? What has he done? And I pray, as parents, as spiritual leaders, as guidance, that God will help us to raise our children in the way of the Lord. And all the children that God has given us, they will not become the children of Belial. I pray God will help us all in Jesus' name. And I want to implore us all to please click like, share, and subscribe button. God bless us in Jesus' name.